When we're trying to do some research, memorize things for a test, do teaching, do research, we're often faced with just a massive amount of information that we have to organize and somehow get through. And it's very tempting for most of us to go out and try to find a technical solution for that, to try to find some note-taking app and hope that by getting the note-taking app, we're going to be able to be better and more productive using all this information. Well, in this video, I'm going to talk about 6 different things. First, I'm going to talk about why starting with an app will not work. I'm going to talk about how starting with a system is the best way to be effective and more productive. I'm going to talk about 4 systems, one from the 1940s, one from the late 1980s, one from the early 2000s, and one that's brand new, it's 2022. But then I'm going to talk about how all of those systems really at their core are very fundamentally and foundationally the same. And I'm going to show you my mashup of those systems and how I do things, share that with you. And then I'm going to talk about how apps can help us with a system once it's in place. And then finally, at the end of the video, I'm going to say like and subscribe and share and all that sort of stuff, because that's just what we do here at YouTube. Let's go take a look at why apps are not the place to start. Now, you might wonder why I think a system is so much more important than the applications. You think if I learn the app, then I'll be able to learn how to be more effective. It just doesn't work that way. So the reason that we want to start with a system is because today, these note-taking apps are like super complex. I mean, you can watch videos on some of these note-taking apps that will consume hours of your life. And then you kind of have to ask yourself, what am I doing? Like, am I learning this app, or am I actually trying to get something done? And if you have a system in place first, then you can look at the app with a new perspective and you can say, how does this app help me with my system of information management, whatever you're doing? So there are a number of systems that I've used over the years, that one very recently and one for a very long time, that have been very effective. So anytime I'm looking at any technological way of augmenting my system, it has to fit the system that I've mashed up from these 4 systems. The first is something called the Zettelkasten. Now, this was created or invented by a fellow by the name of Nikolaus Luhmann, and it's a German word. So Zettel is for pieces of paper, and then the Kasten is the box that you put them into. Very simple system. You just need pieces of paper, you need a pen, and you need a box to put them into. And what you're able to do with this system is you're able to remix and reorganize these pieces of paper. I actually extend it out a little bit. I usually have colored pieces of paper, so each color represents a different aspect of information management. And I even somewhere in here have little flags that I'll use in order to be able to sort through this. Now, I don't use this system as much as I once did because I have moved to more technologically useful systems, so to speak. But for a very long time, and up until recently, this system was actually more effective than what a lot of the apps could do. Some of the apps are really kind of based upon this methodology, so you'll see that this is a great system that finds its way into a newer, more technical world. The next system I use isn't really an information management system. It's more of a lifestyle or time management system, and that's the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People system by Stephen Covey. And Stephen Covey wrote this book in 1988, and it's not really about managing information. It's more about managing your life and understanding the concepts or where to put the things in your life, the big things, the medium things, the little things. That's a quick paraphrase. The book is well worth the read. This copy sold 10 million. It's up to 25 million. It just keeps selling. And it's a very popular way of organizing and putting the why into your system so that anything entering into your life has a place where it fits. Now, building upon that, we have another system that I really like. This was a book written by David Allen in 2001, and I have the book somewhere, but I've got it on my Kindle as well, and it's Getting Things Done by David Allen. And there are some subsequent follow-up books to this as well. But the idea behind this, written in 2001, was that we had a lot of information coming to us, and we needed to make decisions of what was important, what wasn't important. That could go back a little bit to the Stephen Covey book as well. But we also needed to make sure what was our next best action, what context were we performing that action. There's a lot to it. It's sometimes abbreviated as GTD, getting things done, and you'll find that there are a lot of GDT templates and software products out there. I use a product called OmniFocus, which is really a pure GDT solution. It allows me to organize things into projects, actions, next steps, tag them, do all sorts of stuff. But again, let's not worry about the technology. Let's concentrate on the system. And this is the book that is the foundation of the GTD, or Getting Things Done system. Now, there is a more recent book that's come out that's very, very popular. You've probably heard of this if you've seen anything on YouTube about productivity or about building, a second brain, because it's called Building a Second Brain by Tiago Forte. Now, this book came out, it's hard to believe that this book only came out in 2022, the summer of 2022. It's been so impactful on how people are using productivity software. Capture, organize, distill, and express. And that's very similar to the system I use. So I've actually used from all of these systems, and this one included, I've kind of mashed my own together in terms of how I work with information. Now, I will say, before I introduce you to the system that I'm using, you'll want to look at these different sources and choose a system that works for you. And as a word of caution on this, most systems aren't just build it and it automatically runs. You'll often, like any habit that you're trying to form, you'll have to sort of force it a little bit, and you'll have to revisit it and restart. But once you get into using the system, it can be extraordinarily effective, and truthfully, it'll actually relieve a lot of stress in your life, because you'll have a really good place to put the things that are coming at you, whether you're temporarily working to study a subject or whether long-term you're trying to accomplish a goal. Let's take a look at the system that I use, which is a mashup of these 4 systems plus other things that I've used over my research and my study life. Now, those books and the systems that I just talked about are fantastic. It might just work right out of the box for you. For me, I needed to do a little bit more with them. I needed to mash it up a little bit. And so I have a system that I call my Sea of Cs. You can take whatever you want from what I'm about to show you, or the ideas I'm about to share, and please comment down below if there's something you think I'm missing, because I'm always trying to adapt and improve my systems. The other thing is, there are a lot of different tools I could use on any phase of the Sea of Cs that I'm about to talk about, and that would be a subject for maybe other videos. But let's look at the process that I use to work with information for research, study, learning, and all the things I like to do. The first C I have is capture. This is probably pretty common to any system. We have to get the information into some sort of system. It could be a note-taking system, it could be a box with paper, whatever the case may be, we need to capture. Now, in my case, that's increasingly and quite often going to be a digital capture. So a lot of times I have other videos here on the channel where I take physical items and I digitize them either through a scanner or a scanning pen. There are many ways that I can digitize information, but the key element here is not the tool I'm using, it's the fact that I am collecting the information. And the reason that I want to collect the information is because once I've collected it, I can now begin to categorize the information. I can start putting tags on the information. I can start saying, this belongs to this particular category and this particular category. That's going to allow me to create those buckets of information, so I can then move to my third C, which is to connect the information. So once I've collected and categorized the information, I can now start connecting concepts and ideas together. This is very important to me as well. Now, what's really cool about a digital type of collection system is that I can have different pieces of information that have multiple categories, and I can all of a sudden start seeing different types of connections that maybe I hadn't realized before. Some tools are better at this than others, but the concept here is that by connecting information together, I can sometimes get different perspectives on the information, which brings me to my fourth C, cognition and critical thinking. So now I can take the pieces of information I've collected, sometimes from different sources, because I've collected them, categorized them, and found a way to connect them together, I can apply my critical thinking to these different pieces of information and decide which ones have validity for what I'm trying to do. I can see which ones are maybe questionable, and I can go deeper into that source. I can do all sorts of things to really bring my critical thinking skills into play on how I'm working with that information. Then once I've done all that, especially if I'm doing some sort of research or a teaching plan, and if I'm learning as well, is I want to create something out of the information. Because the act of creation and creativity is a fantastic way for us to really interact and understand the information at a deeper, more meaningful level. So my next C, of course, is that creativity. Now I can even go further and expand this and share this with a community. So if you're into a specific area of research or if you're into an area of learning, I always recommend that you look at maybe building a community around that particular topic or joining online communities that relate to that particular topic. And I think by looking at all of these different C's, I create an entire environment that allows me to understand what I'm looking at, understand the research that I'm doing, and understand the act of actually sharing and showing what I'm doing with the world and with a community. When it comes to information, the C of C's is to capture the information, to categorize the information, to connect the information, to apply cognition and critical thinking skills to the information, to use creativity and create something with the information, and to share it with a community in order to put it into the world. Now that's my system. It's all based upon the different things that I just showed you, but hopefully if you can find any use for some of the things that I do, let me know. I can also show you the tools I use for all of that, but again, this video is not about the tools, it's about the systems themselves. Now, any system for managing information, whether it's one that we've learned from someone else, one that we've created on our own, or a combination of other people's ideas and our ideas, any of those systems can definitely benefit from the use of the appropriate technology to support them. It's really the premise of this entire channel, using technology to learn and teach better. However, the key word there is appropriate technology. We want to make sure that we first have the system and it works for us and it's a system that makes sense to us, and then we can add the appropriate technology for each phase of that system and not get so caught up in trying to learn some application, hoping that the knowledge of the technology will result in the information management. First, we have to understand how we're going to work with information, and then we find the appropriate tools to do that work. And that's why I say it's not about the app, it's about the system and the app supporting that system. So as I promised at the beginning of this video, here at the end, I'm going to say subscribe, like, share, do all those YouTube-y things. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.